and the wisdom it gave her.
Hypnosis, mindfulness, meditation, past life regression, RTC, spirituality.
This spiritual fix. Two mystical mamas hacking the self-help game.
With Hannah Fiddler. And Christina Wiltsey.
Welcome to this spiritual fix.
What's your drug of choice, Christina, this week?
It's anything. Actually, water is my drug of choice this week.
Oh, that's a good drug.
If you can believe that. You know, one of the things that Charles, one of our teachers, has told me is that when you're going through like a process, like a really heavy process in whatever way, like the emotions start to crystallize in your body if you don't have enough water, right?
Like dehydrate.
Yeah. But it's like you emotionally dehydrate too, which I think is a really interesting concept. And I've noticed that because like at one point I was like drinking just like a gallon or two of water a day, and I felt like amazing. And I remember I asked him, I was like, what's going on? I feel like water is my like antidepressant. And he's like, yeah, eventually you'll get to feel like that all the time. Like you'll get to feel this kind of elation all the time, but the water helps facilitate it because it's like helping you process and not have anything crystallize in your body.
Right, flushing it out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The solution to pollution is dilution. Dilute those emotions out.
I feel like that makes our bodies feel like super fun sites, right? Like
not that emotions are pollution, but
well, I mean they are kind of, right? Like because emotions are like it's something that's stuck. Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like an emotion is like, it's like a package of energy that has a name, and we're the one who puts the name on it, which is how we then make it kind of pollution, right? Because if it sticks in our body and it has a name.
I think if you resist it, it becomes pollution. And if you just let it flow and accept it, it's just part of the human experience.
Right. But yeah, exactly. And I think that part of not resisting it is all about like part of not resisting it is about not naming it and not being attached to the name of it. Not to be like, oh, anger is coming up again. Like, oh, anger. Cause you like, I feel like when you tag the emotion with like a name, you become more attached to it, or you like create patterns about it. You know what I mean? Like you kind of
You
like
judge it.
You judge it.
Yeah.
End of story. Yep. You judge it.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of just being like, I'm feeling what I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was on the way over here. I was thinking so much about what you said about how, which we should give context for like in a minute, but like what you said about how I feel like so many Western minds, when they take on Eastern thought, are really having this trouble with like thinking that it's going to change their behavior, right? Like thinking that meditation is like you meditate so that you don't become angry, or you like as opposed to just like accepting, like that very subtle shift that says like, instead of trying to fix myself by meditating, by make myself happier, right? Like it's more just that like you can't aim to make yourself happier by meditating, or to make yourself less angry by meditating. Like that's not the aim. The aim is to
wake up.
Yeah, it's to be equanimous and accept, and like just like accept what is.
Right. Like our mutual meditation teacher, how we met, SN Goenka, he said that the first reason why he started meditating was because he had these tremendous migraines, and he went to the meditation teacher and he says, I heard meditation will cure my migraines. Teach me everything. And he said, no, meditation will teach you ultimate truth. If you're seeking ultimate truth and liberation, then come meditate. Your migraine will go away like a natural byproduct, but you don't build you don't build a sugarcane factory to get molasses. So it's like, if we are sitting down to meditate every day with the goal of like becoming happier or curing this physical ailment or whatever, we're not seeing the main goal, which is just to wake up to truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other stuff comes as a byproduct, but again, you know, aim a little higher.
Exactly. And what about you? What has been your drug of choice this week? What's been your spiritual drug?
My spiritual drug of choice this week is acceptance of the moment to moment. Like accepting the now, the present moment, moment to moment, no matter how boring it gets. So even accepting the boringness of it. And that's actually the topic of today is, you know, we're discussing how different drugs of choice, different meditation practices and different techniques we use to become more, to wake up more. And the thing that woke me up or helped wake me up, I'm not fully awake, obviously, was a vision from a monk who taught me about acceptance, which is what we'll talk about today.
I'm so excited to talk about that. But before we get into that, the great conjunction happened yesterday.
Oh, yes. Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. First time in, was it 800 years?
Well, it happens every 20 years, but it's never been this close since 400 years ago, which was like, you know, 1640s around sometime, but it was behind the sun. Like it was during the day the last time.
Okay, so you couldn't see it.
Yeah, we always like to be like, it's the last time in like 5 million years since this has happened. But the nice thing or the bad thing about this world is that it is cyclical, right? And
Right.
But it was pretty amazing. Did you go out and see it?
I went outside and saw it, and I've been just giddy knowing that this has come because I know someone I really adore who was born in 1989 has been having her Saturn return. And so to have your Saturn return during a pandemic is fucking hell. So to know that she's finally going to shift out of her Saturn return and into Aquarius, which is the peace and harmony vibe. It's just so good to know that that chapter is over for a lot of people born in 89.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for the rest of us, right? Like the last couple of days, I thought it was hilarious about like, everyone's like, oh, look, we're going into the age of Aquarius. And then one person was like, and remember, it's a very volatile time. I mean, besides the fact that you've had a headache, right? For
3 days. This is the longest I've had a headache.
Yeah.
Like ongoing.
And nothing, have you tried to like treat it at all or just kind of accepting it at this point?
It's what I would, our beloved teacher, Robbie, would call an ascension headache. It's like just this dull, generalized headache. And it happens when I'm processing deep stuff. And I just feel like I'm just processing and it's just going to go away on its own.
Yep.
I should probably drink more water.
That's right.
Your drug of choice.
Don't let it crystallize. But be okay if it is, except if it does.
Except if it does. Except if it doesn't.
Except if it does, except if it doesn't. Yeah, because I think for me the experience of really wanting to like, you know, go into a new chapter or whatever. And it's been slowly happening all summer. Like, I mean, I think both of us have had just like realization after realization after realization this summer, right? And it's finally, for me, it's getting to the point where I actually feel like I can feel the sustained love period or the extended non-resistant period or the extended whatever. Like I'm starting to feel that.
Right.
And I'm starting to feel how I'm really not like, I kind of feel like a vessel of God, for lack of a better word.
That's great. I think for a lot of people throughout this year, and it coincided with the pandemic, or maybe the pandemic caused it, don't know. But I think a lot of people went through, let's call it spiritual boot camp, just like a lot of life lessons coming at you, boom, boom, boom. And those of us who had a lot of techniques and tools in our bag to handle them and process them and make sense of them did an awesome job of like getting through this pandemic, learning so many things. And a lot of other people got stuck, which is also fine, you know, but this was definitely like boot camp for everybody.
It was. And I think that that's one of the things that we want to talk about on Drug of Choice in general is like, what are those techniques and tools that we use? Because they've helped us so much. And
like, I feel like I've grown twice or 3 times this year than I would have had I been in any other year. And then I couldn't have done it without you and the tools and our teacher, because if you don't have the tools, what are you going to do with all this?
Yeah. You're just going to kind of be stuck, and you're going to probably feel really helpless and hopeless, because I definitely had lots of periods of having that, right? Like, but it was always like, oh, I'm feeling like this. Not at first it was, how do I stop feeling like this? And then it was like, oh, let's explore this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 50 dark nights of the soul this year. Pretty cool.
Exactly. And like, it was so funny yesterday. I was hilarious because this is another topic, but you know, the whole idea of yesterday, I was finally like, I'm finally going to go and actually see if I need to get a drug, because I'm so volatile, like emotionally, I'm so volatile. And I recognize that some of that is just because I channel lots of stuff all the time. I think I'm naturally volatile anyway, but like being a woman and channeling the divine feminine and da 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 da. And so, you know, I was finally going to like reach out to like modern medicine, allopathic medicine, which is just literally so far from like anything that I would ever want to do. But I was like, okay, I get it. I get that there could be some niceness and consistency of like my emotions, and like maybe I should try and do that. And then the person didn't show up to
the psychiatrist.
The psychiatrist didn't show up to the meeting. And then like 45 minutes later was like, oh, sorry, I had an emergency. And it was literally like bawling my eyes out. It was like the weirdest experience. I was like, this is so irrational. Like, I say it as in that,
But
that
you
irrational
felt
is
completely
judging.
abandoned by her.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it wasn't until Luke, my husband, came in the room and he was like, just sat with me, that I just started laughing my ass off. Sorry. I just started to recognize, it was like this swing back and forth where I just started to recognize how sad I was that this doctor who I like just had taken, you know, this is a road that's probably been, I've gotten prescribed stuff off and on ever since my daughter was born, when I started, like my psychic abilities really started up, because I've gone through really dark periods and really wanted that consistency, and like recognized that like my cycle in particular could have a lot of volatility in it for me and the people around me. And then to finally like be there and be on the precipice and be like, hey, I am here, do this. And then it just not happen. It was hilarious.
And she doesn't even like send you a cancellation text or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So the only
Just
thing
like,
I can think
fuck
is
you and your problem.
exactly. Fuck you and the journey that you've gone through for the last 6 years to actually come to my doorstep.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Great Conjunction, I hope that everyone's doing okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that everyone is really experiencing, how high, because I mean, it is like a giddy, like I have this giddy energy.
Yeah. It just feels like so much potential right now.
Yeah.
Manifestation energy.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I want to hear more about this monk, Anna. I want to hear
I
more
will
about
tell
all
you
this.
about my drug of choice this week. Actually, the story begins with maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I had a dream, which was one of those dreams where you don't feel like it's a dream, like the details. Like I was a monk in a cave, like I would want to say Tibetan or Chinese robes, like the burgundy sash across the chest. And I would say it wasn't a dream because I could see like every hair on the back of the person in front of me's head. The other monk, it was shaven, buzz cut. I could see like the soot on the wall from the torches in the cave. And it was just the sense of like, this is extremely detailed and real. And it felt like it was a memory and not a dream. And in front of me is seated is this monk, this guru. And he is so full of joy. And we're in there meditating, you know, maybe 15 of us monks, and he's sitting there facing us. And he had this joy that permeated the room. It was like in the air. It was like palpable. It was like thick. It was like this overwhelming sense of joy that just like overwhelmed you like a blanket. And in this moment, I either woke up or after I thought about the dream, I thought it showed me that my definition of joy is so limited. Like this man was so joyful that his joy permeated the room to the extent that it affected everything it touched. Nothing in that room was untouched by his joy, just seeping out of him. And it showed me that my definition of happiness and joy is such a box. It's such a tight little box of what I think is possible. And this dream was showing me that there is so much more out there. And it reminded me of this analogy of like the tiger who's in the cage, and they're in a 5x5 foot cage, and they pace the cage, and then they let the tiger out in a wild preserve. And what does it do? It still paces that 5x5 boundary. Why? Because of the familiar. Your brain creates neural pathways of what is familiar, and you get used to certain behaviors and you repeat them because that's what's familiar to the brain. And it's not just that, we pigeonhole and we create definitions without expanding our definitions. So I was just realizing, my belief of joy, like if you ask anyone, if you ask, are you happy? Pretty much everyone will say, yeah, for the most part, I'm happy. But we look at them and think, how in the world is she saying she's happy? Like, God,
Yep.
But in her world, according to her definition of happiness, she is happy. And in my world, my definition of happiness, it is happy. I am happy. But what if I expand my definition of happiness? Like, why not? Mm-hmm. So this weekend, Christina and I were at our shaman, Robbie's house, and she led us through a breathing session. And a breathing session is basically a technique or a tool where you are guided to stay completely in the present moment by staying aware of your breath. And there's a certain way that you breathe. And if she notices that you're going unconscious or doing shallow breathing, she will facilitate you, meaning she'll help guide you. Well, how would you explain a breathing session?
Breathing session is, I think you're right. It uses the breath to process emotions in the body, stuck energy, anything like that. And so it's a shamanic breathing technique that kind of facilitates going into a bit of a trance, because you're filling the body up with so much oxygen that the brain kind of stops functioning in its normal way, right? Like it kind of gets inundated with a flush of oxygen, and then it's almost like hyperventilating in a controlled manner, in and out through your mouth. And I think it's called holotropic breathing. I think like that's the official name of it. But I would say that what it does is it makes it so that you are in your body, even if you're experiencing kind of hallucinations and stuff like that, like you're in your body and you're processing the emotions through your breath. Or I say emotions, but you're processing. You're processing.
So Robbie asked us, what's your intention for the session? And I said I wanted to expand my definition of joy, and go into my breathing and my trance-like session. And who shows up? And when I say shows up, I mean my eyes are closed and I'm visually getting an image. The monk from that past life or memory or dream shows up. And he basically guides me through the rest of the breathing session to explain some beautiful things to me. I actually wrote them down because there are so many. So he didn't actually speak English or speak to me in words. It was more, he was showing me images and visions and then would kind of coax me to understand what he was trying to show me. And when I got the answer correct, he'd show me the next image. So the monk basically showed me through a series of images and not words, different concepts. And the very first concept he showed me was an image of reality, weaving reality, and like a comb on the top and the bottom, like a loom. And one was acceptance and one was resistance. And he was showing me that reality is this gentle balance of accepting and pushing away and resisting. And he kind of flashed before me Sir Isaac Newton's third law of motion, which is for every action or force in nature, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In other words, if you push on object A, it exerts a force onto object B, then object B exerts an equal and opposite force. What he was showing me through this loom is that when you resist anything, it pushes right back against you. So what he was showing me is that when you resist reality, what's ever happening in your reality, you're actually making it stronger. So if you want to dissolve your reality or dissolve what's bothering you in your reality, the simple thing is accept it.
Yeah. And that's very similar to transurfing, which is a Russian physicist. One of my teachers got me into that last year, and to the trans surfing crowd, that's called excess potential. It's this idea that if you build something up in your mind of a desire, like we talk about the law of attraction a lot and like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's like, actually, if you keep just like thinking, I want this, I want this, I want this, and like trying to do that and like not imagining, instead of imagining what it's like to just have it, just like accept it and see the vision of yourself with it, but not be attached to it, just be completely empty to it. If you keep saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, then you literally have an equal and opposite force saying, you can't have this, you can't have this, you can't have this, right? Like, so whatever attachment you have,
Because want is wanting something that you don't have. The very essence of wanting is not having it.
Yeah, it's the resistance to the reality of what is, which is that you don't have it.
So you're making that louder.
So much louder. And like, that goes with anything, like trying to, I mean, that's not to bring up politics, but it's the whole reason why if you don't like a political candidate and you put a lot of energy into not liking that political candidate, you're literally creating the equal and opposite force that political candidate will be there. Like, it's like you're giving, and not only that, but you're also feeding another energy field, which is just giving them more energy. Anyway, back to your story.
Right. Well, okay, so the monk goes into detail to explain that there is absolutely nothing such as hate, like the whole idea of the definition of hate. Hate does not actually exist. Hate is just energy resisting reality. So there is no evil entity in the world. There is no hatred in the world. Hatred is simply when you have energy and you're resisting reality because reality is either not what you want or you want something else, which goes into the whole Dhammapada, right? Suffering comes from wanting what you don't have or not wanting what you do have. So he's saying hatred is just resistance. So he's like, we're just not even going to use the word hatred here. We're going to talk about resistance. It's resisting reality as it is. You understand now that there is no such thing as hate, and hate is really just resisting reality. He says, so what is in the absence of resistance? It's acceptance, and that is joy. So he explains clearly that there is no hate, and we're going to use the term resisting, just resisting what is. And he says, the opposite of hate then is not love. The opposite of hate is acceptance. Just accept everything, accept every little thing. And in acceptance is joy. And he said, look at me, I'm an enlightened master. And just because I'm enlightened doesn't mean I don't experience human emotions like grief or sadness or anger, but I resist none of them. And in the absence of resistance, I am always joyful. That was the joy that I felt in the room, was just like pure energy flowing, like acceptance. There was no resistance in him. So joy is not the absence of bad feelings. It's the presence of any and all feelings with no resistance, aka no hate.
Right. And so that's just like kind of what I was saying at the beginning too, which is what alluded to this is like this whole idea that like, if you try and aim, if you are at any point trying to stop your emotions from happening in any of your practices,
you make them stronger.
You are literally barking up the wrong tree, like completely. You're in the wrong fucking continent in the sense of like, and I've done it. I did it for years. I probably still do it a lot, but yeah, that's amazing.
And I had a great taste of this in action, which was like the following day, my business, someone called me to try to negotiate a bill that they hadn't paid for 2 years, a law group. And I was angry. And I was like, nope, I'm not negotiating. If anything, you owe me interest. And if anyone knows me, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have been sweet little people pleaser. Yeah, let's work it out. But I was like, nope, I'm angry and you need to pay me. And I resisted none of it. I didn't judge myself for being angry. I didn't question myself. Am I being too bitchy? I just accepted as it was. And I totally felt the joy behind the anger that he talked about. Like I was joyous in my anger.
That's so amazing.
It was awesome.
And
I hung up like, yeah, you're going to pay me.
I love that, right? It's like the joy behind the anger, because fundamentally the hatred, the self-hate that we build up for ourselves because
I shouldn't be angry.
Yeah.
Shouldn't is the great resistor.
It's the great resistor. Actually, my dad, ever since I was little, my dad always said should doesn't exist. And at first I thought he meant like the societal should, like, well, you should be doing this. And I was like, no, actually the should is like the ego's word, like, for lack of a better way, like the part of you that is like, whose bread and butter is resistance. Right. Who wants you to be in the world and wants you to think that you're a body. We'll just call that the egoic mind, right? Is should. Like, yeah.
Resistance best friend is should. Yeah. So he goes on to say that the monk in this vision, he says, you want to be more joyful. So if you want to be more joyful, you have to let go of resistance. Like that's it. That's all of it in a nutshell. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm thinking about all the, the deep meditation Dhammapada studies I've done. And yep, pretty much he nailed it on he hit the nail on the head. Like, accept it all and you'll be more joyful. He said, it was funny. He goes, the majority of life is boring. Like, you're going to spend the majority of your life sitting in a chair waiting for something to happen, driving your car, wiping snot off your kid's face, washing dishes, getting dressed. Like, the majority of your life is boring. And we try to hold on to staying in the present moment and accepting moment to moment. And then what pulls us out of it? Boredom. I'm present in the moment. I'm feeling this. I'm accepting reality. Oh, wait, reality's boring. Let's turn on Netflix. Let's check my phone. Let's call somebody. Let me run from or resist the boredom of life. And he said, for every force you exert, it creates an opposite force. So just accept that life is boring and it will become less boring. So he says, when you're sitting there accepting moment to moment and you catch yourself slipping away because it's getting boring, just say to yourself, this is life and life is boring for the most part. And I accept it. I accept that life is boring. And when you do it, that boredom becomes weaker and you can hold on to that present moment awareness a little bit longer. And I've noticed that the periods where I'm aware and present and accepting, they've stretched out to become a little longer because I've made my boredom weaker simply by accepting boredom. So he said, by accepting whatever exists now is your most sure way to becoming more full of joy in the future. Because if you can get your mind into the mental habit of accepting moment to moment, no matter how mundane everything is, then when something arises in your reality field that you would normally hate, aka resist, your mind is much more well trained to accept it when it occurs.
Right. So you gotta ride the bike, or you gotta ride the stationary bike of boredom, so that when it's all actual stuff, right? It's all actual resistance. Yeah. Ride
your stationary bike so you can get on the highway when it's time. You can get on the highway and really navigate. Or fitness, mental fitness. So he says there are 3 ways to remove resistance. He's like, you can just do one of them and you're going to hit all of it. But if you do 2 of them, awesome, dynamite. If you do all 3, that's phenomenal. So he said, mindfulness in the moment to moment will remove conscious resistance. So that's staying present in the moment to moment, accepting whatever is or whatever arises is removing conscious resistance.
Right. Okay.
And he says, when you're doing your deep work, like your shadow work, your past life regressions, your childhood memories, your deprogramming of toxic beliefs, whatever you want to call, that you're not necessarily in the present moment. You might even be thinking back on old beliefs. So, it's more a little esoteric. When you're doing that shadow work, we'll call it, you are removing unconscious resistance. Mm-hmm. And you need both.
Absolutely.
And he said, either path will lead to the ultimate goal of removal of resistance, but doing both is dynamite. He said the very last one to remove resistance is grace, which is, we're going to save that topic for another day, but grace is the 3rd method that he gives for removing resistance. And I can say that since having this vision, I feel like my definition of joy has expanded and I feel more joyful simply by accepting it all. Just I'm washing the dishes. I'm like, fuck, I don't want to wash the dishes. Hey, I accept that I'm resisting washing the dishes. I'm accepting that this is boring. And in doing that, I'm recognizing that moment is so valuable. That moment becomes as great of a teacher than any monk vision, you know, if I can stay present in the moment, in the mundanity, what's the word?
Yeah. Mundanity
Mundanity of life.
Yeah.
Mundane.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically the mundane moments of our life in some ways are our greatest gifts.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's interesting you say that because it is so easy for our minds to just be like, oh yeah, I heard what she said. You know what I mean? And it's like, but when it's like, it's one of those things, it's like when you get it, you really get it. And you're like, yes, I totally get this. But then you try and, you know, it's like what, when you're first starting out on this journey of acceptance, there are a lot of different tools and resources that you can have to kind of, that serve as like,
Secretaries on your shoulder.
yeah, or secretaries on your shoulder, exactly. Or training wheels or something like that. One of the best things to do is to do like what Anna and I have done, which is like we've been like spiritual sisters for what?
Before I got married, and you met Luke, right?
Yeah, so for 10 years now, when we first met at Vipassana meditation, and it really ramped up when we both had kids. When I had my daughter, it was like, that's when we started like really exploring all these different areas. But like, I mean, how many times have you just been like, you're just in it, like you're in the middle of a process and you're getting lost in it, and you gotta just, you know, you gotta back out. Like there's no, how many times have we texted each other and just been like, I've been like, I'm so angry at this person, or I'm so angry at this. And the other person's like, just love it. Just, oh, isn't that cute? Isn't that cute that you're, you know,
Yeah.
that you're hating yourself, or that you're experiencing this right now. And you know what? It's all good.
Accept it. Yeah.
Right. So having that spiritual, partner in crime is incredibly important.
Right. Like in the Dhammapada, Buddha just says that there's one triple gems. That would make 9 gems. He says Buddha, Sangha, Dhamma. So Buddha meaning an enlightened person who can kind of lead the way and guide you. Dhamma meaning law of nature, like the law of reality, truth, you know.
Yeah.
And then Sangha, which is your spiritual community. And it's really important. Like, why did he put Sangha up there with him? Like, and with Dhamma, which is the law of nature. But Sangha is so important. It's so important to find somebody or a community that supports you in your spiritual path, because they're the ones who have your back. They're going to call you out. They're going to help pick you back up when you fall. And Sangha is quite the gem. And you are my Sangha. And
Lucky me.
yes.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing, right? Because like you can read a lot of us find it, what's more accessible now is the Buddha, so to speak, like in the sense that somebody will write a book, and not all books are created equal, but there are some, as I like to call, gateway books that just like open people's worlds up. Like one, like Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda is one of them. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. The Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Eat, Pray, Love was for a lot of people by Elizabeth Gilbert. There's a couple of others that I was mentioning the other day.
I Am That by, I can't say his name, Nisargadatta something. I
haven't heard of that one. I Am That? Okay. I know Be Here Now was big back in the 60s for people. That was Ram Dass. And there are a couple of ones that have like really transcended in terms of like, the 4 agreements. I was just thinking about the 4 agreements because that's, you know, do your best. Don't take anything personally. Don't make any assumptions, and can never remember the last one. But there's a couple of them that really transcend, and they give you the wisdom you need to like go. And then hopefully you then find other people who are also going to be on that journey with you, right? They're going to say like, okay, like I'm going to do this too. I'm going to read this book, or you get a friend to read the book too, or you go online and you find a community of people who are all about the 4 agreements. And then you're actually able to like get further into it, because it's really easy for us to read a book and just be like, oh, cool, I get it.
But to live it
is different. And then that Sangha really helps hold you accountable for that. And the law of nature as well. Inescapable.
Yeah, you can't escape the law of nature.
Yep. Cool.
Such as if you exert a force, equal and opposite force will come right back and push on you.
Yep. One of your husband's friends, who ended up being one of our friends, he has this great TED Talk, Marshall Thurber. He has this great TED Talk he talks about precession, which is this law of nature, which we're not going to get into today, but it's really interesting because the whole first part of his TED Talk is all about, so if you were going to try and base your life on something, what would you base your life on? Like, would you base your life on, something that is like changeable and like a law of something that's like, oh yeah, you should drink lots of water. That may be a law of nature, but you should, have acai berry all the time. Like you have to drink, or you have to have, one of the fads. It's not an immutable law of nature, right?
Cauliflower crust pizza.
Yes, thank you. Cauliflower crust pizza is going to be the thing, or, shilajit is like the one thing that's like, it's the new herb that exists. I think shilajit's from India, it's in Ayurveda. And like, you're just like, okay, let's actually, food is one thing. And like, even things that just that are changeable, right? It's like, it's things that you can't really necessarily depend on to be the same from year to year. Instead, base your fundamental behaviors in life on principal laws of nature, because whether we like it or not, we exist in a system that has laws.
Right.
And as we transcend that and as we accept it, then we can bend those laws a little bit. Maybe a little bit, right?
But being able to bend the laws should not be synonymous with being spiritually advanced.
Exactly. The goal is not to bend the laws, even if you can.
It's just a byproduct.
It is. It is as you said,
molasses at the sugar cane factory.
It's the molasses at the sugar cane factory. Exactly. This is awesome. Thank you, Anna.
This is my turn, and it will be your turn on the next episode.
Yep.
And I will be following up with that third law. Not third law. What would he say? A third way of removing resistance, which is
awesome. No, that's good. Thank you so much, Anna, for sharing,
right.
Which is acceptance of reality.
As it is, no matter how boring it is.
Oh, God.
And life can be boring.
So hard.
Life is boring. What am I saying? It can't be.
It's totally boring. Yeah. Other than when we talk together and we are like, let's do this new process. Yay!
Let's try a new drug of choice.
Exactly. Cool.
All right. Till next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of This Spiritual Fix. Please be sure to like us, give us a rating, and leave reviews so that people can find us and so that we can get on the charts. Thanks so much and have an amazing day. And remember, humility, acceptance, gratitude, done. Hi, Christina, co-host of This Spiritual Fix. Has listening to our podcast stirred up something for you with the primal wounds? The good news is you have access, and that is the first step to transforming these wounds. We created support packages to help you through this process, and they're available on our website, www.thisspiritualfix.com. These packages were designed by Anna and I, combining techniques and hacks from our own experience working through our own wounds. Each packet contains a workbook and 2 meditations, one about forgiving those who have wounded you, including yourself, and one about reprogramming old beliefs. You can buy an individual support package, or for those next level processors, all 5 packets: abandonment, injustice, rejection, betrayal, and humiliation. Available on our website and our shop.